Hermetics. Franz Bardon, the Magician. Lesson 3. The Air Principle. Deep reading about the air principle. Not a real element. The most radical opening statement. Bardon opens the air chapter with a statement that should stop the reader completely. Initiates do not regard this principle as a real element. After 2 chapters establishing fire and water as the twin pillars of all creation, Bardon then says, the third principle is not quite in the same category. This is not a demotion. It is a structural revelation about the nature of reality itself. Fire and water are generative. They produce qualities. They push. They pull. They create and destroy. Air is relational. It does not exist independently in the way fire and water do. Air is what happens between fire and water. It is the living space of their interaction, the medium through which their opposed forces become productive rather than merely canceling each other. Think of it this way. If you place 2 magnets with opposite poles facing each other and hold them apart, the field between them, the tension, the dynamic, that is the air principle. Not the magnets. Not even the force. The between. The space that makes relationship possible. This is why in Kabbalah the letter Aleph is one of the 3 mother letters, the mediating one between Sh, fire, and M, water. Aleph is often rendered as the first letter, the silent letter, the breath before sound precisely because it precedes the polarization into distinct qualities. Bardon and the Kabbalistic tradition agree on this structural position completely. Neutral equilibrium. What neutral actually means. Bardon says air establishes the neutral equilibrium between the active and passive action of water and fire as a medium. The word neutral is routinely misunderstood to mean passive, uncommitted, or weak. In Bardon's system, it means the opposite. Neutral means active at a higher order. A thermostat is neutral between heat and cold, but it is not inactive. It is actively maintaining the relationship between 2 opposing forces. A judge is neutral between 2 parties, but the act of judging is among the most demanding forms of action. A bridge is neither bank, but without the bridge, nothing crosses. Air's neutrality is precisely this. It is the active maintenance of dynamic equilibrium. The moment air disappears, fire and water move toward either explosive conflict or frozen stalemate. Air is what keeps the conversation between them alive and productive. This has immediate implications for the magician's self-development. When Bardon insists on magical equilibrium as a prerequisite for all advanced work, he is asking the student to develop their air principle, the capacity to stand between their own fire, will, passion, desire, and their own water, emotion, memory sensitivity, without being consumed by either. The magician who is only fire burns through everything. The magician who is only water drowns in feeling. The magician who has developed air can hold both poles simultaneously and act from the equilibrium between them. That is the description of genuine wisdom, not the suppression of the poles, but their conscious integration. Heat from fire, moisture from water. Air as living synthesis. Bardon identifies air's 2 properties with precision. It has taken warmth from fire and moisture from water. These are not random assignments. They reveal air's fundamental nature as a synthetic element. It does not generate its own primary qualities. It inherits from both parents. This is alchemically significant. In physical atmosphere, warmth from fire gives air its expansive quality. Warm air rises, spreads, carries. Without warmth, air stagnates. Moisture from water gives air its receptive quality. Humid air carries seeds, scents, information. Without moisture, air desiccates and destroys. Together, weather, climate, the living breath of the planet. Every weather phenomenon is a drama of fire and water mediated by air. At the elemental level, the air principle carries both the expansive impulse of the electric fluid and the attractive quality of the magnetic fluid simultaneously, but in balance, not in dominance. It is the electromagnetic fluid in its neutral, equilibrated state. Bardon adds, without these two qualities, life would be unthinkable. This is not hyperbole. He is saying that the synthesis, warmth plus moisture, expansion plus receptivity held in equilibrium, is the definition of the conditions for life. All created life has become motion. The deepest claim. The sentence Bardon writes about the air principle contains what may be the single most compressed cosmological statement in the entire adept. Through the interaction of the active and passive elements of fire and water, all created life has become motion. Unpack this carefully. Motion is not assigned to air directly. It arises from the fire/water interaction, and air is the medium that makes that interaction possible. This means air is the condition for motion, and motion is the condition for life. In physics, this maps perfectly. All motion requires a medium, a field, a between where force propagates. Electromagnetic waves need the electromagnetic field. Sound needs air. Life needs the dynamic tension between expansion and contraction expressed in time, which is another way of saying motion. The heartbeat is fire, systole, expansion, and water, diastole, contraction, creating rhythmic motion, and it is that rhythm which constitutes being alive. Stop the oscillation, and you have not shifted the polarity. You have ended life. Air is why the oscillation continues. It is the medium of the rhythm. At the spiritual level, consciousness itself is motion. A thought is the movement of attention from one state to another. Awareness is the movement between the known and the unknown. The air principle in the spirit as intellect is the organ of this inner motion. This is why Bardon maps air to the mental body's function of thinking. Thinking is structured motion of consciousness. The two poles of air. Even the neutral has polarity. Bardon does not exempt air from the law he applied to fire and water. These two properties also give the airy principle two polarities, namely the life-giving polarity in the positive effect and the destructive polarity in the negative one. This is philosophically crucial and easily missed. If air is the principle of neutral equilibrium, how can it have its own polarities? The answer reveals something deep about Bardon's system. Neutrality is a dynamic condition, not a static one. It can move toward life or toward death depending on how the balance is held. The positive pole of air as life-giving is equilibrium that enables the dynamic balance that gives both fire and water room to express themselves productively. The negative pole of air as destructive is equilibrium that suppresses the false neutrality that, by denying both poles their force, creates stagnation, suffocation, the death of what could have lived. Real-world examples of air's negative pole. The person who is always balanced and never takes sides and by that false neutrality enables harm through inaction. The mediator who neutralizes all conflict by suppressing both voices and thereby kills the creative tension that could have produced resolution. The intellect that analyzes endlessly and decides nothing using air's discernment to block both fire's action and water's feeling. Literally, stagnant air, no circulation, no breath, suffocation. The destructive pole of air is not violence, that belongs to fire, or dissolution, that belongs to water. It is asphyxiation of potential, the slow death that comes from refusing to let the polarity breathe. Air in the spirit. Intellect as the magical organ. In Bardon's mapping of elements to the qualities of the spirit, air occupies a specific and irreplaceable position. Fire, quality of spirit equals will, sense equals eyes, vision, exercise focus equals optical imagination. Air, quality of spirit equals intellect, all aspects, sense equals ears, hearing, exercise focus equals acoustic imagination. Water, quality of spirit equals feeling, life, sense equals sensation, exercise focus equals emotional depth work. Earth, quality of spirit equals consciousness, Sense equals taste and smell. Exercise focus equals present moment awareness. Akasha, quality of spirit equals conscience. Sense equals everything together. Exercise focus equals pure concentration proceeds on its own. Air equals intellect. Ears equals hearing. This mapping is not arbitrary. The ear receives without projecting. Unlike the eye, fire, which sends attention outward, hearing is fundamentally receptive and discriminating simultaneously. You cannot choose what enters your ears the way you can choose where to look. Hearing requires surrender to what comes and then intelligent discrimination of what you received. That double movement, reception plus discernment, is the air principle in operation. Intellect in Bardon's sense means far more than logic or academic ability. It means all aspects of mind that organize, discriminate, compare, weigh, and arrive at understanding, analysis, synthesis, memory organization, conceptual navigation, pattern recognition across domains. The intellect is the faculty that sees relationships, and relationship is air's domain. The magician developing the air quality of spirit is developing the capacity to hold multiple things simultaneously without collapsing them into premature conclusion. This is why Bardon insists that an intellectual magician, air-dominant spirit, must still develop will, fire, and feeling, water. Intellect without the will produces paralysis by analysis. Intellect without feeling produces cold, brittle reasoning that misses what cannot be measured. The fully developed air quality in the spirit is wisdom, not information, not even intelligence, but the capacity to perceive relationships accurately and act from that perception. That is what the Hermetic tradition calls the equilibrated intellect, the mind that neither projects blindly, fire error, nor retreats into feeling, water error, but stands, discerns, and moves precisely. The Kabbalistic Key. Letter A, the mother letter of equilibrium. Bardon's key to the true Kabbalah reveals that Kabbalistic tradition recognizes three mother letters from which all others derive. SCH, Shin, the primordial principle of fire, the will, the electric fluid, the first outpouring of divine creation. MEM, the primordial principle of water, the magnetic fluid, love, the receptive principle. Aleph, the mediating principle, air, the intellect wisdom, the law of equilibrium. Bardon writes, it has the role of mediator between the primordial fire and the primordial water. A corresponds to the intellect, wisdom, the law of equilibrium. This is the cosmological structure condensed into three letters. Before any other quality differentiates, before any element fully individuates, these three mother principles operate, and air is the third not because it is least, but because it is the condition of relationship that allows the other two to exist in productive tension rather than mutual cancellation. In practical Kabbalah, the letter A vibrated in the Akashic principle expresses the all-pervading, the law that governs all polarities. To master the letter A is to master the principle of equilibrium itself, is to be able to feel where the balance point is in any system, any relationship, any elemental composition, and to restore it when it has been disturbed. That is not a small power. That is the power of the arbiter of reality. The mystery of breathing. Air as the vehicle of magical impregnation. Bardon's teaching on conscious breathing is the most practically immediate expression of the air principle in the student's life, and it reveals air's hidden function as the universal carrier. The core teaching, if one transfers a thought, an idea into the air to be inhaled, it absorbs the Akashic principle of the air in question and passes it on to the air substance through the electric and magnetic fluid. The mechanism Bardon describes is exact and layered. Thought impregnates the air through the Akashic principle. The causal level sets the pattern. The electromagnetic fluid of the air carries the imprint. The medium encodes the message. The lungs transfer the material element substance for body maintenance. The physical level is sustained. Simultaneously, the encoded electromagnetic fluid passes through the bloodstream to the astral matrix, then to the astral body, then through the mental matrix to the immortal spirit. The information reaches all levels. This is not metaphor. Bardon is describing a complete vertical transmission system in which a single breath, properly impregnated, delivers its content simultaneously to physical, astral, and mental bodies. The air principle is the medium that makes this possible. It is the universal carrier because it already contains both fire, warmth/expansion, and water, moisture/reception, in equilibrium, and therefore can interface with all levels of the human being. The practical instruction that follows is deceptively simple. It is not the quantity of inhaled air that matters, but the quality, the idea you put into the air. 7 conscious breaths morning and evening, impregnated with a clear intention, done with absolute conviction. Bardon says this is sufficient. The air principle amplifies quality, not quantity. This is opposite to force-based systems that rely on accumulation. Air works through precision of relationship, not weight of effort. The core synthesis. Akasha, the law of equilibrium, the letter A, principle of balance itself. Mental or spirit, intellect with all its aspects, analysis, synthesis, discernment, reason. Astral or soul, social intelligence, communication, adaptability, lightness of being. Etheric, prana as mediating life force between vital fire and vital water. Physical, atmosphere, wind, breath, warmth plus moisture united into motion. Universal, the electromagnetic equilibrium between electric and magnetic fluids. The deepest thing Bardon points to through the air chapter, if fire is the universe's first act and water is the universe's first memory, air is the universe's first understanding. Akasha is pure potential. Fire is the first movement outward. Water is the first movement inward. Air is the first moment the two movements recognize each other, and from that recognition, motion is born, and from motion, life. Every act of genuine understanding, not just information, but seeing the relationship between things is you participating in the original creative air. Every time you hold two opposing truths simultaneously without collapsing into one, you are working the air principle at its highest. Every breath, consciously taken and consciously impregnated with intention, is a micro-recreation of the original moment when the universe found its equilibrium between expansion and contraction, and in that finding, began to move. This is why the air principle in the spirit is called intellect and why the highest expression of intellect is wisdom. Not the accumulation of facts, not even the force of reasoning, but the capacity to perceive the living relationship between opposing forces and to stand in that relationship without flinching.